I love How to Train Your Dragon. The first movie was an absolute fantastic masterwork because it was very simple to a certain degree. Town is attacked by dragons. There's this constant prejudice against dragons because of that. Boy ends up befriending dragons and finding out that they're not all bad. There's actually a lot more to them, especially through one specific dragon, and essentially has to convince the rest of his village to follow suit, go against their norm, go against everything that they've ever known. But to a certain degree, it makes sense because there's constant losses on both sides, and so some form of hatred has to end. And the best part about it was when you got to the towards the end and Hiccup ended up losing his legs because one of his legs because of a dragon, and he still doesn't have any animosity, he doesn't have any hatred, he doesn't have any fear. He takes it all in stride. And the flight scenes, God, the flight scenes for How to Train Your Dragon are just so beautiful, so fun, so glorious, and just something else entirely, so freeing. And I remember watching this first movie and just being really blown away by it because of just how fun it actually was. I was actually kind of shocked because I didn't actually watch it in theaters, and that was a bit of a shame. I wish I did because it was just such a fun and fascinating first movie. Now, I'm going in a bit of chronological order because then you got to the Dreamworks Dragons series, and it told the story that happened in between the first and the second movie, even after the second movie came out, and then you got the third movie, and that had come out, and so on and so forth. Because DreamWorks Dragons ran for a good long time, and it kind of starting out as the populace adapting to just dragons in general, being okay with dragons, being able to live with dragons, thrive with dragons, have dragons around, some people even taking dragons of their own and learning from dragons. Those experiences were fabulous. And the thing about it is the series knew that eventually, while yes, you could have dragons as the enemy, a lot of dragons were kind of dangerous and fun and cool. Being introduced to a bevy of different dragons was pretty awesome. The real fun and interesting tension came from the various different villains that Hiccup eventually ended up going up against as the series went forward. And the funny thing is, a lot of enemies that Hiccup encounters and becomes embroiled in battle with, they look down on him as well until he outwits them, he outsmarts them, he outmaneuvers them, and he gains their begrudging respect. They see him as just as much of a threat because of his mind, his intellect, and his strategies, and that ended up becoming a lot of fun. Enemies like Alvin the Treacherous or Dagger the Deranged, who were some really fun villains for the most part, but eventually some of them became allies going forward, which was also pretty interesting to a certain degree. Sometimes some of them losing their edge gave me mixed feelings, but we also got some pretty fun enemies going forward too. And then you got to Defenders of Berk, where it was mostly our heroes defending against enemy attacks, incoming, opposition, and people trying to come after them, take their dragons, take their land, do them harm, do them wrong. It became more of an epic once you got into the second season. Like, the story started to become a little bit more dense. It wasn't just defending from one-off villains, you were defending more and more from really intimidating enemies. But this is where a lot of the turning point for a lot of Hiccup's enemies really started to come into play. But the best part was, because originally the DreamWorks Dragons series came onto Cartoon Network, but the best was when it became Dragons Race to the Edge, where you started to really see that transition of Hiccup going into his post-puberty form, basically. Basically setting things up for the second movie and the appearance change that Hiccup had there. And the thing about Race to the Edge, it was more so about Hiccup going out into the world, dealing with various different challenges, enemies, adversaries who became a lot more intimidating, a lot more bloodthirsty, a lot more unrelenting. Enemies like Krogan and Vigo Grimborn. And interestingly enough, there were a lot of ties to the second movie as the Race to the Edge series went on. And it made a lot of sense because it was setting up that you had people capturing dragons for their own end, standing in stark opposition to everything that Hiccup stood for. And that was pretty fun because Hiccup started to really become a leader in his own right as of the Race to the Edge series. It started to become very apparent he was on his way to becoming chief. And that's why it did so well to kind of work you into the second movie. Now, you can go into the second movie cold for the most part. I mean, you can fill in the blanks as much as you want to, but you don't even remotely need to watch the series in order to understand the second movie. It's just that it's kind of fun to do so. Because a lot of the adventures from the series really help you kind of see where Hiccup has been through, what he's gone through, how he developed a lot of his tools and his weaponry and stuff like that. I mean, you can yada yada over all of that, but I mean, it's a fun adventure series. And the thing about Dragons 2 is that it really rolled with that more serious turn of everything, where you start to deal with Hiccup and his mother and his father and the relationships that were between the two of them, and how Hiccup knows that he probably is going to be chief one day, but he doesn't know how to handle that kind of responsibility because he sought his dad's approval for so long that the idea of now being so much of an approved figure that everybody's just ready for him to take control. He's smart, he's courageous, he's skilled. Hiccup has so much going forward for him, and so many people accept and respect him that it just makes sense for him to be groomed to be the next future chief. And going forward as the story goes on, he has no choice but to accept that role. Now, I will admit there were moments in the second movie that just broke my heart, almost unnecessarily so. There are moments that I'm kind of mad about what they did, but it comes from the fact that I just love these characters so much that the direction that they went in wasn't bad, it's just that it made me sad. And so I have to kind of applaud it for getting so much emotion out of me. I really, really love this series. And then you got the third movie, or better known as The Hidden World, where you discover this whole nother realm of dragons who are able to just kind of live in their own kind of territory, not so much be out in the world and potentially attacked, imprisoned, enslaved, used, yada yada yada. It was the swan song of the series, because the thing about it is you couldn't really have anything set between 2 and 3, because when you go over it, it's obvious that not a lot of time passed between 2 and 3. And you get introduced to the idea that Toothless might not be with Hiccup anymore. And it presents the question of, is that such a bad thing? Because Hiccup, he's now his own person. He has his own life, and Toothless is getting ready to have his own life after being introduced to a female, which is interesting because they don't take it in such a bad direction. It's not like Toothless's girlfriend becomes Hiccup's girlfriend's new dragon or anything like that. It's like, no, it's kind of like Toothless has been this wild animal who has been with Hiccup for the longest time, and there's now a place for Toothless to kind of belong and be a part of. And it's Hiccup kind of needing to let him go because of that. And I really did love the third movie, but I don't know, like, it was a kind of melancholic love because I knew this would be the final movie, this would be the end for the series, and that, this was wrapping everything up. And I just kind of wasn't ready to say goodbye by the time I got to the third movie. It just kind of felt like, I wanted them to just go off into the sunset and just have loads more adventures after that. But to know that their adventures together came to an end was kind of a bitter pill to swallow. Because it's just like, I just want to have in my imaginations, like, one day we could just stop back in Berk and see Hiccup and Toothless riding off to save a dragon or help stop some quell between dragons and humans or something like that. But, that was kind of the end for the series until you got the holiday special. And that's How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming, which was a nice, short little film that kind of caps everything off. And I mean everything. Hiccup in his life with Astrid, his kids, Toothless, and his kids, and how, just from time to time they come back and visit Hiccup and just have a good time. And it ended up being this sweet little period on the series. Like, it's not like them going away is forever. They can still see each other from time to time, and it kind of cuts in between the final scene of the third movie and adds a little something extra for you to kind of show you that, yes, Hiccup has done well not having Toothless around, but that doesn't mean they're not still friends, that they don't still care about each other, that there isn't still this love and feeling of family between the two of them. And that meant a lot to me. That really did. Like, that ended up being just the nice little icing on the cake to bring everything to a nice, soft conclusion to go out on. Because most series never get that. Most series never get that. To just have a good, solid conclusion that caps things off in a nice, satisfying way. And if I'm being honest, it was the fact that I was able to have all this time with Hiccup and Toothless and Astrid and Snotlout and Fish Legs and Rough Nut and Tough Nut and all their dragons and Stoic and Gobbert, and just all these characters were just such a part of my life for pretty much a decade. Like, seriously. I only watched the How to Train Your Dragon movie about a year or two after it came out, which even then I feel bad that I didn't go see it in theaters, but I'm glad it did so well. And the reason why I watched that first movie? Because of the series. The series was coming out. I think I remember them putting the movie on Cartoon Network, and I watched it and I fell in love with it because I was just like, wow, this is a great movie. And 118 episodes? Just, dude, this did fabulously. And I'm just glad they gave a chance to something that just wasn't really full of one-offs, but gave the illusion of that. And it's something that I wish networks would just understand and would take a page out of this book or even the book of anime, because it's just like, dude, you could do a lot with a series with a story. Just because older people enjoy these stories doesn't mean you can't capitalize on that in any way. I don't know why the fact that a series ends up being liked by people who skew a little bit older is such a bad thing. Because you would think you could sell a little bit easier to people who have their own income, who have jobs, who can just go out and buy merchandise and stuff like that. I've never understood why it seems like studios don't want to capitalize on teens and adults in terms of more, not overly gritty and violent animation. Just set it within like the young adult series, and it's something that everybody can kind of enjoy. That's why Avatar: The Last Airbender did so well. I don't get why studios don't want to acknowledge that there are people out there who enjoy that kind of stuff. And wouldn't you know it, by the time this finally came to an end, I'm glad this got the proper ending it needed before this happened. We ended up with Dreamworks Dragons, Rescue Riders, which skews very young. I watched the first episode and I noped right out of there. Not that it was bad. No. And maybe it would have been great if I kept watching it, but it was obvious it skewed a lot younger than what I was ready for. And that's not a bad thing, but I will admit I wanted to be a little bit selfish, and I wanted it to be about Hiccup and Astrid's kids going off on these adventures and stuff like that. And sometimes you would see the older generation pop in every now and again. That would have been fine by me, because they had their adventures, they had all this time to shine, and passing it on to the next generation. I kept hoping their kids would just gotta have appearances here and there and stuff like that, but no, it's a whole nother land, situations, all this good stuff, which honestly kind of detracts a little bit from where the original, the other series ended, but que sera. Just not my series at the end of all things, which is fine. I mean, hey, if kids like it, kids like it. There's a more serious series out there if they ever want to just catch something that's a little bit more in-depth, I guess you could say. Although I have to admit that the one male dragon, Winger, being voiced by Zach Galston, did kind of draw me in just a little bit. Like, Steven Universe for the win. But now my question goes out to you. Did you watch any of the DreamWorks Dragons series? Did you only watch the movie? Has seeing this video possibly inspired you to go back and watch the series? Because the series definitely is worth a watch. It does so much for these characters to build upon them and bring Hiccup to a new age of himself. And I really do recommend watching the first movie, going through all of the seasons of the series, then going through the second movie, the third movie, and then Homecoming, and maybe watching a few of the specials in between, because, man, Dragons had a lot of content. Fans of the Dragon series got to eat well for almost a decade, with Rescue Riders being the overly saccharine dessert that you can kind of pass on for the most part. It's just too much sugar. Just a little too much sugar. And I like sugar. I do like sugar, but I really am curious how many Dragons fans are out there listening to that. Sound off in the comment section below. What's your favorite dragon? Who's your favorite character? What was your favorite series, season, movie, moment, all that good stuff. And if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.